Nobody announces a family trip 5 weeks early. You book the flights, you pack the bags, maybe you tell people once you land. That is how normal families do it. But on the exact day Prince William and Princess Catherine stepped onto the grass at Royal Ascot, not the day before when King Charles went alone, on that day, a leak landed in every major British newsroom. Meghan and the children are coming to Britain. By the time we get to the end of this, you will understand exactly why that leak dropped on that morning at that hour, and what it is really paying for. The timing was not an accident. It is never an accident with these two. On the morning of June 19th, 2026, while the Prince and Princess of Wales were being photographed at Ascot, looking exactly as composed and dutiful as a royal couple is supposed to look, a story broke quietly across British papers. Meghan, the children, coming to the UK. Not a statement from the palace, not a press release, a leak, the tool people reach for when they want the impact without putting their name on it. And the day chosen for it was so precise that once you notice it, you cannot stop noticing it. The day before, Charles had gone to Ascot by himself. No leak, no story. The second William and Catherine walked in frame, the announcement dropped. This is not the first time the spotlight has split at the exact wrong moment for the rest of the family. A bombshell interview timed to a royal tour, a Netflix trailer released the night before a palace event. It has happened often enough that calling it a coincidence now takes more generosity than the pattern deserves. This leak on this day about this couple fits that pattern almost too well. What makes it stranger is how far ahead of the actual trip the announcement came. The visit itself is nearly a month away. Families do not hold press briefings 4 weeks before a holiday. Brands do, with something to sell. People who need a story to take root before they land, before anyone on the ground can shape it, announce early. And nobody covering this asked the obvious question: what needs to be true in the public's mind before that plane touches down? That question has an answer. It is sitting inside a court case Harry lost that somehow turned into a win anyway, and a king who, against all logic, made sure of it. In May 2025, Harry stood in front of the High Court and lost. The ruling was plain. The committee that oversees senior royals' protection had acted within the law when it reduced his security after he stepped back from royal duties in 2020. Harry called it rigged. He called it a conspiracy. He left that courtroom with nothing restored. No armed police, no guarantee his family could set foot in Britain with anything close to what he had had as a senior working royal. The case was over. The ruling stood. Then, quietly, something moved. Within months of that loss, Harry asked the Home Secretary directly for a fresh, independent look at his security risk. A private citizen now, living in California, no longer bound by any royal duty, asking the very institution that had just won in court to reconsider. And it agreed. The committee looked again. Soon after, people close to Harry began telling reporters with more and more confidence that his protection for the Birmingham trip had grown back to something close to what he had had as a senior working royal. He lost in May. By the following June, he had what he had asked for anyway. The judges said no, the system said yes, and nobody in an official position has put their name to the decision in between. That silence says more than any statement would. The Home Office would not comment. Harry's team would not comment. The palace stayed quiet. For something this sensitive, taxpayer-funded armed protection for a multi-millionaire who has spent years publicly criticizing the very institution now guarding him, silence is not restraint. It is a giveaway. Governments announce the things they are proud of. They let a leak carry the things they cannot defend out loud. And this leak came from the same direction every other one has. There is one man whose habit of choosing peace over accountability shows up across this entire story, and his name is not hard to guess. Charles. King Charles III, the same father Harry described with barely hidden contempt across hundreds of pages in his memoir, the same man painted as distant and weak in a book that sold millions of copies and aired the family's most private wounds to the entire world. According to every source close to the story, that same man is the one driving what is happening now, not a bystander pulled along by events. prince, the one who extended the invitation, the one who offered a royal residence, the one who wanted this visit badly enough to push the machinery of government in a direction the courts had already ruled against. And that machinery, it turns out, was nervous about exactly that. Inside the committee reviewing Harry's security, sources describe two camps: police and security officials arguing the threat to Harry is real and documented, regardless of his royal status. Political figures on the same committee worried about how this would look to the public. One person involved put it bluntly: there is real concern that this becomes a backlash story, that the political risk is too high. And yet, the decision went through anyway. Something heavier than political caution tipped the scale. That something is a king reportedly dealing with serious illness, said to have softened towards his younger son in ways that would have seemed unthinkable 2 years ago, and who by every account close to him has decided that time matters more than appearances right now. A father wanting his grandchildren in the room before it is too late is not hard to understand, but a monarch using the Home Office, the machinery of the state, and public money to make that happen, while ordinary families deal with rising bills, rising crime, and a justice system that looks different depending on who you are, is a different question entirely. The personal and the political have folded into one decision here, and the cost, as usual, lands on people who never got a vote in it. What is harder to look past is what sits underneath this trip, the reason for the timing, the reason Meghan specifically needed this story in British headlines right now. Because across the Atlantic, in a warehouse nobody's talking about on camera, something is quietly running out of time. Right now, Meghan Markle has roughly 650,000 reminders of that sitting on shelves. When As Ever launched in April 2025, it looked like the start of something real. Products sold out in hours. The jams, the teas, the honey, the flour sprinkles, gone almost instantly. Riding the wave of curiosity and the Netflix spotlight Meghan had spent years building toward, it looked like she had built something of her own, finally, outside the royal name. Flush with that first success, production scaled up fast. Hundreds of thousands of units made, warehouses filled. Then, the customers stopped showing up. By the first quarter of 2026, As Ever's website had lost a third of its traffic. Not a dip, a collapse, and one that tracked almost exactly with a parallel drop in how Americans felt about Meghan, the very audience she had spent years building as her alternative to a British public that never fully warmed to her. Netflix, the platform that had given the brand its launch and its audience in the first place, quietly stepped back. Both sides called it a planned transition. People inside the industry called it Netflix walking away from something that had not delivered. A website glitch earlier this year briefly let the public see what was really sitting in storage. More than 650,000 unsold items, jams and teas with expiration dates getting uncomfortably close. Commentators ran the math out loud. The number that kept surfacing was somewhere around $7 million in product quietly going bad. Here is where it all connects. A lifestyle brand survives on one thing: the feeling it sells. The buyer has to believe the jam, the tea, the flowers connect them to something they could not get on their own. For As Ever, that feeling was always borrowed. It came from the glow of a woman who had once been a duchess, who had walked palace halls, who had stood on that balcony. Take that away, and what is left is a jar of jam next to 100 other jars of jam, which means the single most useful thing Meghan could do right now, for the brand, for the inventory, for the dates ticking down in that warehouse, is remind people exactly where she came from. Not California, not Netflix. The palace, the family, the crown. One photo of Meghan walking through Britain with her children near royalty, wrapped in everything that brand once stood for, is worth more to As Ever than any ad campaign money could buy. It is, by any honest read of the timing, the most likely reason this trip was announced 5 weeks early, on the exact day Catherine was in every headline. There is just one problem with that plan, and it has a name: William is not going along with this. And that, more than anything else in this story, is the detail that breaks it wide open. Here is the contradiction at the center of what Charles has built. For months, he has quietly created the conditions for this visit, softening his stance, offering a residence, leaning on the Home Office, reportedly hoping for one photo of his grandchildren in a royal home before his illness takes that chance away. He has done it all knowing his own heir wants no part of it. William and Catherine are not lukewarm here. They are not waiting to see how things go. By every account close to that relationship, they are prepared to simply not be in the room. One insider put it without any softening at all. If the Sussexes come to Britain, William would reportedly avoid public appearances for the duration. That is not a figure of speech. That is the plan. And when a palace aide was asked directly about reconciliation, the answer left nothing open to interpretation. Not on the table. Sit with that for a second. The King of England is actively working to bring back a son who told the world his own family was racist, who described the most painful parts of his marriage and childhood in a memoir sold for a fortune, who sat across from Oprah and told hundreds of millions of people that this family had broken him. And the man next in line for that throne is so against this trip that he is planning to vanish rather than share a postcode with it. This is not a family working through a rough patch. This is two completely different ideas of what the institution is for, pulling in opposite directions. Charles sees a father, William sees a risk, and the crown is being quietly stretched between them. What sharpens the contradiction further is the paper trail Harry left behind. The memoir did not go easy on William. It described physical fights. It detailed private arguments with a level of specificity no amount of time will soften. Harry told the world his brother grabbed him by the collar and put him on the floor. He described William's face mid-argument. He brought Catherine into it in ways that left lasting damage. Then, sitting in front of a BBC camera in May 2025, Harry said with what sounded like real feeling that he wanted reconciliation, that life is short, that there is no point continuing the fight. William's answer, according to everyone close to him, was silence. Not angry, not cold, the silence of someone who has already made up his mind and sees no reason to revisit it. Harry's attempts to reach his brother have not landed. The calls go unanswered. And still, Charles keeps knocking on that door on Harry's behalf, as if a king can simply order a broken relationship back together because it would be neater that way. Nobody in the palace seems to have an answer for the obvious question. What happens the moment Harry and Meghan land, the photos get taken, the royal shine Meghan needs settles over the as-ever brand, and William is nowhere in the picture? What does that say about who actually runs this family? Because a king overruling his own heir on something this personal, this public, carries consequences that outlast a single summer visit. And those consequences are already moving faster than the palace expected. The man who built a career on burning bridges is now asking the people he burned to hand him a torch in Birmingham. Harry wants Charles to open the 2027 Invictus Games, not attend, not send someone in his place, open them. Stand on that stage, in front of the world's cameras, next to the son who called his family racist, who turned their private grief into a bestseller, who reduced decades of royal service to a backdrop for his own story, and smile for it. Harry has reportedly told people close to him that having his father there is his dream, that it would mean everything, that it would be the reconciliation moment the world has been waiting for. On a purely human level, a son wanting his father at his proudest moment is not hard to understand, but this is not a school assembly. This is a globally televised stage, and a man who has spent years taking his father's institution apart is now asking that institution to show up and bless his own venture with its presence. It is not an olive branch. It is a rebrand, and the person being asked to supply the polish is the same man Harry once described, in print, with open contempt. What stands out is how little has actually changed hands in return. Harry has not walked back the racism allegation. He has not apologized for the memoir. He has not softened the Oprah interview, the documentary, the podcast, the years of carefully timed stories painting his family as cold and complicit in his pain. He says he wants reconciliation, but reconciliation without any accountability is not peace. It is just moving on without saying sorry, and the British public has not forgotten any of it. They remember the Oprah interview. They remember the comment about a baby's skin color that Meghan herself raised on a global stage and that nobody in the family has ever been able to fully answer or put to rest. They remember Catherine being named. They remember the book. And now, through their own taxes, they are being asked to fund the security that makes this entire trip possible. That is the number that keeps getting lost in the emotion of it. Harry and Meghan made roughly £75 from the Netflix deal alone. The memoir weighed Harry around $20 million more. They are not struggling. They are not in danger of losing anything. They are multi-millionaires with a production company, a lifestyle brand, an estate in Montecito, and a team of lawyers and publicists working full-time on their image. And yet, the case being made, seriously, through official channels, backed by the Home Office, is that British taxpayers should fund armed protection for a family that chooses to visit a country they have repeatedly called unsafe and hostile. The political members of that committee said it themselves. The optics are bad. Against a backdrop of families struggling to pay their bills, bad does not begin to cover it. There is one more thread worth pulling. The official Sussex website, presented with all the visual weight of a government page, is still quietly linked to and endorsed by palace infrastructure that Charles controls. It is, in plain terms, a storefront, and the King of England, already under pressure on his own popularity, already struggling to draw a firm line with the son who keeps crossing it, is lending the Crown's reputation to a commercial site built specifically to sell the story of leaving the Crown. It is such a complete circle that it would almost be impressive if it were not ordinary people footing the bill for it. And that bill is about to come due in a way the palace has not prepared for. The palace has weathered scandals before. It has never quite weathered this exact mix. A weakened king, a furious heir, a brand running out of road, and a public that has finally stopped giving the benefit of the doubt. What is building in Britain right now is not simply anger at Harry and Meghan. That anger has existed for years, and the institution has absorbed it, deflected it, waited for the news cycle to move along. What is different is where the anger is now pointed. It is landing less on the Sussexes and more on Charles, because Harry and Meghan have never pretended to be anything other than what they are. They told the public exactly what they thought of the royal family and exactly what they believed they were owed. You can disagree with every word of it, and most people do, but at least it is consistent. Charles, on the other hand, has spent his reign presenting himself as a modern king, a man of principle, who understands that an institution has to earn its place in people's lives. And behind closed doors, he has bent the rules, leaned on the Home Office, offered the residents, restored the security, and sent a clear message. For the right family member, none of it actually has consequences. That word, treason, keeps surfacing in public conversation about this, and not lightly. People remember Harry telling American television his own family was a danger to his wife and children. They remember Meghan raising a comment about a baby's skin color on a global stage, an allegation that was never formally investigated or resolved, and watching it harden into accepted fact, while Catherine, the person it pointed at, was given no real chance to respond. They remember the memoir, the kitchen floor, the description of his brother's hands. None of that gets fixed by a summer visit and a photo outside a royal home. These are not fringe opinions. This is the mainstream of British public sentiment, and they are watching their king look past all of it. Trust in the monarchy is not something that stays put once it is earned. It has to be renewed constantly through the visible, unglamorous work the rest of the family does. The hospital visits, the regimental dinners, the school openings, none of which trend online and none of which gets a Netflix deal. And every one of those working royals is being quietly undercut right now by a decision made above them. When the public looks at this family and asks what the actual rules are, what it takes to lose your privileges, the answer they are getting is not reassuring. The answer looks like there is no line, not for the right person. William understands this better than anyone, and by most accounts, it is the real source of his anger. Not the memoir, not even the racism allegation, as damaging as that was, but the institutional damage. He has spent years building a version of the monarchy meant to survive the next 50 years, smaller, more accountable, closer to ordinary people's lives. Every door Charles opens for Harry undoes a piece of that. That is not a message a future king can afford to send, and William, unlike his father, seems to understand that without any room for sentiment. As for Meghan, this trip will produce photographs. It will produce coverage. It will hand, as ever, the royal association it badly needs, a reminder to a drifting audience that the woman behind the jam was once a duchess, that the crown is part of her story, whether the palace likes it or not. Whether that is enough to move 650,000 units before they expire is a separate question. Whether it repairs her favorability on either side of the Atlantic is another one entirely. A photograph is not a business plan, and a carefully timed visit to Birmingham does not undo a brand that lost a third of its audience in one quarter and lost its biggest streaming partner along with it. The shine fades fast. The warehouse does not empty itself. And underneath it all, the security debates, the brand strategy, the palace politics. There are two children, Archie and Lilibet, 7 and 5, being brought to a country they barely know, to meet a grandfather they barely know, in the middle of a fight that has played out in courtrooms and committee rooms for years before they were old enough to follow any of it. Whatever you think of their parents, whatever you think of the king, those two children did not choose any of this. The adults around them, on every side of this, might want to remember that before the next leak, the next photo, the next perfectly timed announcement lands on someone else's good day. History will not remember the photographs from Birmingham. It will not remember the jam, the leak, the timing at Ascot, or the quiet return of a family that left loudly. What it will remember is what Charles did the moment he had a chance to hold the line and chose not to. Institutions rarely collapse from the outside. They get unlocked from within by someone who decides that keeping the peace today matters more than protecting the foundation for later. Charles may still be proven right. The photos may land well, the family may smile, and the public may move on. But if the monarchy is still explaining itself in 10 years to a generation that watched a king bend every rule for the one son who broke every trust, this is the moment they will point to: a leak, a sunny afternoon at Ascot, a door that should have stayed shut. Charles had one job: hold the line. So tell me, did he just sign the monarchy's death warrant? Drop your answer below. I am Jane Expose, and you already know I never leave a story half told.